So I want to thank you for this opportunity to talk to you about the anti-poverty ministry and also for your ongoing support of our ministry. It's very much appreciated. For those of you who don't know, the Regina Anti-Poverty Ministry grew out of the Regina Downtown Chaplaincy, which for almost 25 years, from 1971 to 1995, under the leadership of the Reverend Bob Gay, helped to serve the needs of low-income people in Regina and worked for social justice. In 1996, which was the United Nations International Day for the Eradication of Poverty, or International Year for the Eradication of Poverty, we changed our name and our mission statement to identify changes that had taken place in the chaplaincy over the years as it had moved to primarily an advocacy, education, and social justice form of ministry. So, having just gone through the affirming process, we've added a few points or one key point, including inclusion, to our mission statement. But our mission statement presently reads, "Rooted in God's radical, inclusive love, expressed through compassion and action, the Regina Anti-Poverty Ministry advocates and educates with and for those seeking social and economic justice." Now, this mission statement certainly relates to our United Church Creed, particularly where it talks about the call to seek justice and resist evil. But it is also a mandate and a calling which come from Scripture, as we believe that as a church we have a strong scriptural call to be seeking social and economic justice, a strong call to see that justice is done for the poor. And so before going into more of the details of the anti-poverty ministry, I want to delve briefly into the Scriptures. In Jesus' time and in ours, poverty is often associated with shame and wealth. And wealth is often associated with public and divine approval. The Beatitudes, which Laura read this morning, point in exactly the opposite direction. In the prophetic tradition, they show us God's special concern and option for the poor. And I've always found it interesting that whereas the Beatitudes in Matthew are given as part of the Sermon from the Mount, Luke makes a point of saying that the Beatitudes were presented by Jesus on a level place. Whatever else we may believe about Jesus, he was most certainly a prophet who fell within the tradition of the Hebrew prophets with their calls for social and economic justice. To the prophets, justice finds expression in action that alleviates the distress of the oppressed and seeks to overcome the conditions that create poverty and break down community. The prophets do not view poverty as the result of the inadequacies of the poor, nor do they see it as inevitable. Instead, the conditions of the poor are the consequences of self-serving decisions made by the political and economic elite. And Jesus and the prophets have a lot to say about that. This does not mean that the prophets were always critical. Isaiah was a counselor to kings, and Jeremiah, as we read this morning, said of King Josiah that he did justice and righteousness by responding to the pleas of the poor. And on a lighter note, there's the story of the king of Assyria, who was so concerned about the finances of the kingdom that he decided to pawn his most prized possession, the Star of Euphrates. It was the most valuable diamond of the ancient world. So he took the star down to the pawn shop, and the pawnbroker made him an offer. The king was very disappointed at how low the offer was, and in frustration said, "But don't you know who I am?" To which the pawnbroker replied, "When you wish to pawn a star, doesn't matter who you are." of God's special concern for the poor and for social and economic justice is one that runs throughout the Bible. Indeed, it is one of the clearest messages that we have in Scripture. It begins with the liberation of slaves from Egypt in the Exodus story. The Psalms, wisdom literature, and epistles are full of the message that God is vindicator of the disadvantaged and stronghold for the oppressed. Jeremiah in this morning's passage goes so far as to say that to defend the cause of the poor is to know God. This message is confirmed by Jesus Christ, who stood in solidarity with the poor and related his ministry to their hopes, who sounded a call for Jubilee, which was a radical redistribution of wealth and economic power. Now, returning to the anti-poverty ministry, our work is primarily carried out by a two-member staff, including myself. This is becoming a bit older news, but my longtime co-worker, Bonnie Morton, retired from the ministry at the end of 2021 after 34 years of exceptional service. In December of 2021, we hired Colleen Taylor to an anti-poverty support worker position, and she brought with her experiences working as a social worker within government, both in income security and family services, as well as long, extensive experience in social movement organizing. The board of the anti-poverty ministry is made up of a slight majority of United Church members, but we also have designated spots for other faith groups or denominations, representatives of community groups working on poverty issues, and very importantly, first voice, low-income volunteers with present lived experience in poverty. We do our work in three ways: individual advocacy, public education, and social justice. These days, because of the level of our casework, individual advocacy is what we're having to focus most of our energies on. This is ensuring that those people and households that come to us for support are receiving the benefits that they're entitled to, and that they're being treated fairly by the institutions that they're dealing with. We generally try to mediate conflict between people and institutions in a way where there's mutually agreed upon solutions, but we do represent clients through the appeal processes which are in place to resolve conflicts. Often people come to us as an absolute last resort. Most of our casework is based on responding to decisions made by provincial income security programs. This is due to the loss of welfare rights services across the province. In the late 1980s, when I was doing my Master of Theological Studies at St. Andrew's Seminary, my facilitator suggested I should do my practicum with the Self-Help Council, which was a welfare rights group in Saskatoon. At that time, there was 8 groups that had a mandate in the province to do advocacy work on behalf of people on income security programs. The following year, after I left that practicum, the government funding for that program was shut down, as have 6 of the 8 agencies that are in place, meaning that ourselves and Classic Law in Saskatoon are the only 2 agencies with a specific mandate to do that work. And so obviously, and one thing I will say about Classic Law is they're limited to the boundaries of the city of Saskatoon, which means that roughly a third of our caseload now is outside of the city limits of Regina, and everywhere from Buffalo Narrows to Estevan and Maple Creek to Sandy Bay. So we are covering now a good chunk of the province. Our income security work involves dealing with cutoffs and denials of benefits. Obviously, that's what will drive people to seek out an advocate, if they're left without any income support whatsoever. But we also do handle a lot of cases related to shelter and utility coverage, as well as special needs. And we help people with the disability assessment process in order to get onto the Saskatchewan Assured Income for Disability. In the last year, we've dealt with a particularly high number of cases where folks were falling behind in terms of their rent. This is based on a combination of inadequate benefits and rising rents across the province. We also see a lot of problems with the Saskatchewan Income Support Program, or SIS program. One of the issues with the SIS program is that when it replaced the old Saskatchewan Assistance Plan, it got rid of a lot of special needs. It also stopped covering the actual cost of utilities for people. So now people have to pay their power, energy, water, and telephone out of their shelter allowance. And the shelter allowance is only $660 a month in Regina and Saskatoon, and $600 a month for the rest of the province. People also receive $365 for all their other basic needs, with very little allowance for any additional special needs. So part of what this has meant is that more and more people have been left without utilities, which makes it very difficult to gain and maintain housing. The provincial auditor a couple of years ago did a study which found that 5,200 SIS households were in significant arrears or cutoffs with utilities, and that is a significant part of the present housing and houselessness crisis in the province. The other key program is the Saskatchewan Assured Income for Disability, which came into place for people living independently in 2012. It provides a benefit now of $1,159 per month, which wraps together rent and most other basic needs. But it does have some provisions still for special needs, and it does cover the actual cost of utilities. That being said, I often mention that the SAID program went 8 years from 2015 to 2023 without a single benefit increase. And during that period, we lost the rental supplement program and other supports for excess shelter, as well as many special needs. So people are much worse off on the SAID program than they were back in 2015. One number, I'm not going to throw out a lot of statistics today, but one number I want you to remember is 3.8, because it's going to come back a couple of times. There is a real misconception out there that a lot of taxpayers' dollars are going in terms of transfers to income for people living in poverty through income security programs. We did a study of the last couple of provincial budgets around this time, or last spring, and what we discovered is that the amount or the percentage of the provincial budget that is earmarked for benefits for people on income security through the SIS and SAID program is 3.8% of the provincial budget. So well under a nickel on the provincial tax dollar is actually going directly in terms of income supports, which I think is not commonly known, because there's this view, sadly, in many circles, that government continues to throw money at the problem, and that a sizable amount of tax dollars are going to people living in poverty, when that isn't the case. So those issues are important, but I will be coming back to that 3.8% in a moment. Along with our advocacy work, we do help people navigate other systems in terms of charitable supports in the community. We also provide pastoral care for people who are dealing with issues or crises which are not just social justice or advocacy or charity related. One final point about our individual advocacy casework is that we do provide a regular advocacy training session for our interns as well as interested volunteers, and we've had ministry personnel and others in the last year who have taken it. This helps us develop advocacy skills in the city and in the province, and helps us keeping up with the growing demand for this service. When people take the training and then put in 30 hours of advocacy service, we do provide a recognized advocacy certificate. The second area I mentioned was public education, which involves presenting workshops on poverty issues and producing resources on anti-poverty issues. We give many presentations to congregational, ecumenical, and multi-faith groups, as well as community groups around the province. We also act as an anti-poverty resource center and are a media resource on anti-poverty issues, being quoted roughly 50 times per year through interviews and press events. A couple of key educational programs that we're involved in are the practicum programs at the University of Regina. Every fall and winter we have either a social work or human justice studies intern, sometimes both at the same time. And this allows us to train the social and justice workers of the future. We've also found it's been helpful because many of these folks go out, get jobs in government, and often they're folks that we're working with on the other side of the table down the road. And this semester we're on our 79th placement as the anti-poverty ministry. Next semester we'll hit 80. Another key educational activity is our monthly study circles. The first Thursday of every month we have a group of low-income volunteers and low-income and disability activists and volunteers who get together to talk about anti-poverty issues that affect their lives. While our staff may provide resources or line up guest speakers, the topics are decided and often led by members of the group. These have provided an opportunity to make sure that we're keeping in touch with the concerns that people have on a day-to-day basis, but it's also acted as a really powerful support group for the people involved. Often people think that the issues that they're dealing with are being dealt with in isolation, and this has provided an opportunity for people to recognize that that is not the case. The final area I want to talk about is our social justice work, which involves working with our community partners and others to promote systemic change and social change to move towards the alleviation and ultimately the eradication of poverty. Two of the groups that we work through are End Poverty Regina, which meets monthly and brings together activists and organizations that are working on poverty issues. And in the last year, it's really become kind of a bear pit session for many politicians. We've done much of our lobbying work through that forum. So in the course of the last year, we've had the Minister of Social Services meet with End Poverty Regina. We've had the Mayor of Regina meet with us. We've had the shadow ministers for housing, for disabilities, and for social services meet with us, as well as 3 members of City Council. We've also been part of the Mayor's Roundtable on homelessness and given multiple presentations to City Council. In the last year, we also had met with Member of Parliament Lorne Steinley to talk about the Canada Disability Benefit, and we're in the process of setting up a meeting with Minister Buckley Belanger to talk about both the Canada Disability Benefit and social housing needs here and across the country. Every year on October 17th, which is the UN Day for the Eradication of Poverty, we have an event to commemorate the day, and this year we held a First Voice Anti-Poverty Forum, which brought together people living in poverty to share stories, concerns, and solutions. We think it's very important that in the anti-poverty movement, as the saying goes, nothing about us without us, so making sure that those voices are heard and looking for ways to work together moving forward. A couple of key issues that we've been dealing with in recent years. One is our charter challenge against the government of Saskatchewan for forcing people to take out early CPP at age 60. This went before Court of King's Bench in 2024. A decision came out, the judge's ruling came out roughly a year ago, and unfortunately we were unsuccessful. However, in the course of 2025, we did appeal to the Saskatchewan Court of Appeal and expect a court date in the course of 2026. Early withdrawal of CPP is of no value for people who are on the SED and CIS programs because it's clawed back dollar for dollar up until the age of 65. But post 65, by taking it out early, they have lost as much as 36%, and that's kind of the average that they lose post 65. So it's taking people living in poverty and extending the poverty into their senior years. Another few key issues that we've been dealing with have been in regard, as I mentioned, to adequate income security benefits, but also the need for a living wage is something that we've been long calling for, as well as quality and affordable housing and childcare. One thing that people don't often recognize is that these commitments are actually commitments that Saskatchewan and Canada have made under international law. Under the UN Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, it's been identified that things like adequate income security benefits, a living wage, and quality and affordable housing and childcare are recognized human rights. And the UN Committee has been very critical of Canada for not upholding these rights in such a wealthy nation. I mentioned the 3.8%, which is what people on income security programs are receiving in terms of the provincial budget. But $3.8 billion is the amount that Saskatchewan pays on the cost of poverty every single year. A few years ago, we had a social policy researcher who was retired from the University of Regina do a study, and we asked the question, how much money would it cost to raise everybody in Saskatchewan out of poverty, out of legislated poverty? And the answer he came back with was $547 million, which obviously sounds like a lot of money. But the Poverty Cost Campaign has discovered over the course of a number of years, going back to 2015, that we are paying $3.8 billion a year on the costs of poverty in our health systems, in our family services systems, in our justice system. So the costs of poverty are roughly 7 times what it would cost to raise everybody in Saskatchewan out of poverty. So in terms of, I want to touch very briefly on some of the success stories at a systemic level that the Anti-Poverty Ministry is being connected to. We were involved in bringing in the discounted bus pass in 2003 in Regina, which then spread to the other 6 municipalities in the province with municipal transit systems, meaning that people on low income and provincial income security programs could receive a discounted pass. We also were involved in significant benefit or play a significant role in terms of benefit increases in the 2006 provincial budget and a number of budgets since that point. We helped bring in the telephone benefit for people originally on social assistance, which is spread now to SED as well. Unfortunately, it's been lost to CIS. We also have seen an improvement in terms of the earned income exemption, meaning that people can earn more money on both the SED and CIS programs before it's clawed back dollar for dollar, which is something that we've been long calling for. That being said, we know that while casework advocacy is something that where we see results quickly and easily, and there's a high success rate, systemic advocacy and social justice don't come quickly and easily. But if we return to our faith perspective, and as we go into Lent, We see that while Jesus had an ethic that was marked by justice for the poor and Jubilee, it was also an ethic marked by servanthood, obedience, and ultimately ended in a cross. And on the day of crucifixion, the cross would seem like complete foolishness, but in the light of the resurrection, it turned out to be the very power and wisdom of God. So there's a message for ourselves in our church, and that is that being obedient and faithful will not necessarily lead to easy success and popularity, but we are still called to be faithful, even when we cannot see what good it will accomplish, even when we can't see how it's impacting those around us. We are to stand firm, for in ways that we cannot yet imagine, God will use human obedience to mold the future. Such is the power of our God. Thanks be to God. Amen.
So Peter, we're going to have our minute for mission, what we're going to pass on that this morning. Peter, can you tell me how many people connected with RAPM last year?
We handled an all-time high 2,616 clients
So 2,600 clients.
Yeah, and it'd be the third year though that we were over 2,500.
Yeah, so there's a lot of need out there. Thank you. Yeah, so we were going to hear about the London chaplaincy, but we'll hear about that another time.